X-Men 97 is finally here, a moment I have been waiting for. And was it worth the wait? We've been waiting many years. I'm about to answer that question in this review. I really have a lot to say about these episodes, and I'm so excited to talk to you about them. But before we get to them, I gotta ask, I gotta know, what happened? What happened with Beau DeMayo? Because after watching this, I really need to know the answer to that question. This might be the best teamwork I've ever seen from the X-Men, and it makes me so happy to just see everything sort of carried forward. I have so many thoughts about everything. Okay, we're talking about 2 episodes. I'm gonna try to keep this succinct for you guys. Let's start off with episode 1. So, there are some things that are a little confusing about this in terms of when it picks up and how Jean is ready to pop in terms of she's about to have this baby. How much time has passed? A few months is what we were told. I don't know if that math adds up, but I was fine with it. I just accepted. I think there's been a time skip. Scott and Jean are married now. I don't remember if that happened at the end of the season. I'm currently going through season 1 right now, so I do want to rewatch the original, but unfortunately, I didn't have the time to get there before I started this series. So if I did miss something, please let me know in the comments. I'm sure you will. And in terms of her, having a baby, that was also a thing that I was like, all right, this is just happening right now and I'm cool with it. I wasn't sure if that was going to be later in the season, but I like that we started right off with that. I think the things for me that really have been highlighted in this first episode is it is exposition, but we're also getting a sense for really who all of these characters are as we go through. So it's a really great sort of returning episode for fans of the original series, but it's also a really great first episode, I think, for anyone new that might be coming in who's never seen the series before. You do really get a sense for these characters and kind of where the X-Men are at this point in time, being without Charles, with sort of Scott taking over for Charles and being the leader of the team, and sort of how they all relate to each other and are really this family and really this unit that has come together. And I think what's really cool as well, as someone that loved the original series, is seeing that built upon in terms of the teamwork. Let's talk about the animation in this episode and in terms of the first 2 episodes. I personally think the animation here looks really sleek and really smooth. It still has those moments of jank built in, which I love because you kind of need that, but I do really like it. When I first watched the trailer for this, I was apprehensive about the animation, but as time has gone on, it's really grown on me, and the more I see it, especially in motion, the more I tend to like it. The thing that I think they've done in terms of the update here, and from what I understand, is that it's supposed to be actually exactly the same style. They've just done it digitally as opposed to hand-drawn, because we don't really do hand-drawn anymore. A shame, I know, but that's just where we're at. And clearly, we also have more of a budget with this animation. That's very clear. There's also a lot more depth in terms of the colors. So whereas when you watch the original X-Men series and everything kind of feels a little flat, I mean, not everything, but a lot of things feel flat in terms of just the colors. This really has a lot of depth to it and a lot of texture with those colors, which I love. I also think it's really cool that in this first episode, what we're doing is we're taking on the Sentinels, kind of a callback to the original series in that very first episode, but unlike that first episode, we're seeing this beautiful contrast to, in this first episode of X-Men 97, as opposed to the Sentinels being this really massive challenge that actually sort of, not really, but kind of, it is implied in the first episode, cost, one of the X-Men's lives. We think that, in episode 1 of the original series, that Morph has been killed by a Sentinel. Of course, we later find out this isn't true, but I digress. Here, we are seeing the X-Men at their height in terms of their ability to work together, master their powers, and these Sentinels, they are making quick work out of these Sentinels. They are teaming up. We've got Gambit charging up Wolverine's claws. We've got Beast being a big goofball and just getting in a Sentinel and piling it around. Even though, yeah, maybe that's not how that works. But the thing that I love about this is X-Men. And so X-Men for me is these big, goofy, sometimes really soap opera moments as well. And sometimes these big, goofy action moments that's a lot of it, but it's also really grounded at the same time. So we get both of those sides, and they're both a part of X-Men, and that's why I love that bit, even though it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous, and I love it. We also get Storm getting to come in here and have these major, like, just OP moments. I really love what they did with Storm in this first episode. She is clearly goddess tier, and that is what I like to see. She gets to sort of strike the sand around them in this ground where they're fighting the Sentinels, turn it into glass, make a tornado, shred up that glass, and then, like, attack people with a tornado full of glass. That's Storm, baby. That's Storm. It was fantastic. And really, everyone gets a moment to shine. I do feel like there are some people that aren't as highlighted in this first episode. I would say in the first episode, some of the main people that we get that I think get the most time to shine are Cyclops, Jean, Storm, and kind of Jubilee, I would say. Everyone else is, like, not shining as much. I mean, I feel like Rogue always kind of just has this spark to her for me, but I don't know if that's also because, like, Rogue is one of my first, like, animated crushes. Rogue and Jubilee, I definitely had a crush on when I was a kid and I first started watching the show. And, you know, Wolverine obviously kind of gets his moment to shine, but I would say those are the main people. So it's not as balanced, but it's also early on and we do have a big cast. And another thing that I want to touch on is the booba. Oh yeah, I want to touch on the booba. So a lot of people have been talking about this. I've been seeing this circulate. Everyone's talking about what happened to Storm's booba. Well, I'm here to tell you. Alive and well. I don't know what people are watching. I think it's because there's a whole part where, like, it's kind of goofy that I have to talk about this, but I just had to talk about it because it's, one, it's so ridiculous, and two, it's not even an issue. So there's a part where Storm is in this sort of pink outfit, and she's wearing, like, a loose top, so she doesn't, I mean, the booba are not prominent because it's supposed to be, like, a loose top because this is 90s fashion. And then there is another time when she's in her X-Men costume, and she's at the UN and she's fighting, and there are some shots from there, friends, where there are the booba. That's mainly what I have to say about this. I also would like us to keep in mind, even though I just spent a whole second talking about that this is a show that was originally intended for, you know, kids. So it is kind of weird when we're like, I need more TNA in this kid's cartoon. Where is the TNA? I understand, because for me it was also an awakening of sorts, if you will. But at the same time, it was in the original series. But it also was sprinkled in. That Rogue shot that everybody's obsessing over, that's one cell. Also, whoever owns that one cell right now, that cell's got to be worth a lot of money at this point in time. I don't know what's worth more, Wolverine with the picture or the cell of Rogue's booty. But yes, just wanted to let you know it's in there. And to the people that are saying it's not, did you watch both these episodes? And did you watch all of them? I need to know. So let's go into episode 2. So what's the difference here in episode 2? So in episode 2, after we kind of have dealt with this Sentinel situation, and we are also introduced to Sunspot, who I also really loved in this. His facial animations are perfect. And I mean perfect. In episode 2, we're dealing with the fact that Magneto has shown up, and Magneto is basically claimed with his book that is the will of Charles Xavier. Yeah, we're back to saying Xavier, everyone. So I now realize when I started on Nerd, I used to say Xavier all the time, and it drove people crazy in the comments. So I stopped doing it, and I started saying Xavier. And I now realize I got Xavier from the animated series, because I'm pretty sure that is how they said it in the original animated series, too. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure. So Charles Xavier's will says within it that Magneto is going to be taking over the X-Men. And if you're thinking, well, that's weird that it's a book. It is weird that it's a book, but that's also very much a Charles thing to do. Case in point, you can check out the comics if you want comic book proof of that. And of course, the team has a lot of reactions to this. It's also established that Rogue and Magneto have romantic history, so I guess we're going down that route. I don't think that was ever touched upon in the original show, but I love that we're adding it in. It is a thing from the comics. It is super weird. I kind of love it. I kind of love it, and I kind of hate it, but I also kind of love it. And I like that it's adding some tension to the relationship between Rogue and Gambit that isn't just, you know, oh, Gambit's, like, kind of unsatisfied with the fact that he can't, like, kiss Rogue. You know what I mean? I feel like we get that a lot, and so when you add Magneto in and you make it more of, like, a love triangle, it's just adding a dynamic that we don't get to see as often with Rogue. And it's perfect with Magneto because he is one of the few people that Rogue can touch without having to worry about hurting him. But mostly what we're dealing with is not just this love triangle. We are dealing with the fact that the X-Men aren't sure how to feel about the fact that Charles left them in the care of Magneto and that he's supposed to be leading them now. They're surprised that Scott wasn't chosen, but in a way, Jean theorizes is because Xavier wanted them to be free, to, like, have their family and not have to be tied to the X-Men. And she's kind of suggesting that maybe it's time that they leave the X-Men and go do their own thing. And this was a moment when I said, this seems suspicious. And maybe it is. We're going to get to that in a bit. So, everyone's dealing with this in a different way. Ultimately, the UN come and they want to take Magneto away after he's revealed himself and changed his suit, which, by the way, is a comic book accurate suit. You can check it out. If you think this suit is dumb, then you think comics are dumb. It is kind of a goofy suit, but that's what I love about it. I love the gloves. For me, the gloves really complete the look. So Magneto's been helping out the X-Men, and he's been obviously in the public eye, and the UN's like, this guy's a criminal. So they want to come and take him in and put him on trial. And he agrees to have a trial because he wants to try to win the trust of the people, and I think more importantly, win the trust of his X-Men over. So they have this trial, there's a bunch of people protesting, it ends up breaking out into this, these protesters are there, and they're attacking the UN, and everyone's in danger, and of course, what are the X-Men doing? They're trying to protect all the people, they're trying to de-escalate the situation. We get some moments in this that really speak towards, I think, the discourse as well that has been happening around this series, and it's very perfect and spot on in terms of what we're all experiencing, in terms of there being such a huge divide right now between people that are all claiming to be X-Men fans. And some of the things that these villains that we're up against say literally sound like the haters out there. I gotta be real with you. It was a very bizarre reflection, especially when you consider that this was, I'm sure, written before any of this discourse was made known. But it also just ties in perfectly to the themes of X-Men, which is really a team that is about family, especially found family, and it really is a team that is about fighting to protect people, even if those people hate you and fear you. You're protecting them anyways and trying to coexist. And it's really about, I mean, I think Magneto has this line where he basically says, you know, you don't have to accept us, but you do have to accept the fact that, like, we all have to inhabit this earth together, and at the end of the day, we are all people who have that shared experience of living on this planet and wanting to, like, needing to come together sometimes to take care of the planet. And that's what it's really about. And Magneto even wants to, at one point, crush these people who have tried to attack and fight against the mutants and hurt them, and sees these judges that have put him on trial as these massive enemies who have not protected him, his team, and put everybody in danger, because ultimately what happens in this episode is Storm gets blasted with this gun when she flies in to protect Magneto, who's being targeted, and it messes her up really bad. She ends up actually losing her powers, which I know some people, I think, are going to be concerned about. But here's the thing. I'm not concerned, because I think Storm is going to get them back. I know Storm is going to get them back. They're not going to let it go like that. And I'm very actually interested to see what Storm's journey will be, and if it maybe takes her even to Wakanda, and maybe we're even going to get Black Panther in this. I don't know. I think her being a literal goddess is definitely going to come into it, and I think that might be the key to unlocking her powers again. But when Magneto takes these people up and blames them for sort of what has happened, he is faced with this choice of, do I destroy these people? I could easily do it, but he thinks back to his friend Charles, who also entrusted him with the X-Men, and he ultimately decides that no, this is not the way. I gotta do this for Charles. I gotta try to focus on coexisting. And he just says, it's not about you accepting me. It's about the fact that we all have to coexist. What a beautiful freaking message. And what a message that is, I think, more true than ever. It's always been something that's been at the core of the X-Men. And the fact that so many people right now are missing it, it's actually, like, deeply upsetting to me. Because if you don't get that, like, that is X-Men. And if you don't think that's X-Men, y'all in denial. I don't know. That's always what X-Men has been for me, personally. Even if we go all the way back to the 60s, we get that sort of theme that comes in of mutant hate pretty early on, to be honest with you. Definitely in the Chris Claremont era. And this is definitely a show that seems to be taking a lot from the Chris Claremont stuff. Basically ends with Magneto getting the UN to sort of, like, give them Genosha. They're going to have their own place to go. So it's not quite Krakoa. But also, I want to say, I think Genosha is going to be a version of Krakoa. We're seeing, a mutant nation that's going to be acknowledged. Magneto's going to get a seat on the UN. I think it's going to be a version of Krakoa for sure. I like the fact that I think this show is going to be a blend of multiple things. Near the end of the episode, what ends up happening is Jean goes into labor. She's about to have this baby. They go to the hospital. The hospital doesn't even want to take her because she's a mutant. It's awful. So what does Rogue do? She uses her powers to take sort of the memories, the knowledge of a doctor so that she can help Jean deliver the baby. She commands the nurses there to help her, and they deliver this baby. And of course, the baby is a little boy who they name Nathan. I don't want to say I told you so. But I told you so. I knew it was going to be a little version of Cable. However, at the end of the episode, when we return back to the school, we learn that this might not be Jean, or something is happening, because someone arrives at the door at the end of the episode, and it appears to be a woman who looks very similar to Jean. So is that Madeline Pryor? Or is the Jean we've been seeing in this episode the whole time Madeline Pryor? We're hopefully going to find out in the next episode, or eventually. It might not be the next episode. My theory is that the version of Jean that we have is actually Jean. And the woman who came to the door, I think, is going to be Madeline Pryor. And I think they flipped the script in the terms that Jean actually gets to just be Nathan's mom in this, which I kind of like. I think it makes things simpler, and you don't have to have a weird psychic fight where memories get transferred, and that's the whole thing that happens. It might be a little too weird for the animated series. I'm not sure. The animated series is definitely not afraid to get weird, but it might be too much. We'll have to see, though. I don't know. People had theories that the pregnant version of Jean was going to actually be Maddie, and so that could be true. However, if it is, it means that Cyclops has been with this clone for months who probably thinks that she's Jean or something. There's a lot of consent things that are going to be weird about that, but it is comics, so I'm sure we could do it in a way that we'd all accept and be like, oh, okay. I want to do a couple brief shout-outs, but I want to say I really loved what they did with Morph. Morph's powers in this are so cool, and Morph is so OP, and I'm so happy about it. Getting to see Morph transform into all these characters, Psylocke, Colossus. I mean, it's so cool. It's so rewarding, and I'm so happy that Morph is on this team. Getting to see the way that Cyclops' powers are used so creatively, it's so clear to me that, this show understands who Cyclops is, for one, and two, like, how his powers work and all the cool stuff that you can do with them and just how powerful he is. Also, the voice acting, I would say, across the board is spot on, especially Cyclops, who I believe is not the original actor that voiced him. So that's amazing. I need to shout this out. This is important. So in X-Men 97, we have Ray Chase, who is voicing Cyclops, does an amazing spot-on voice for him, and replacing Norm Spencer, who tragically did pass away in 2020, so that is why he couldn't voice the character. If you're wondering, it was very crucial, actually, to the production here. They really did want to bring back every single person they can for voices. So they were very passionate about that, and they did it as much as they could, to my knowledge, because it was important. I also want to say this episode and the last episode, I think the character that kind of got, like, the least to do is probably Bishop. And I want to see more Bishop stuff because I really love Bishop, and I think what they did have with him was really cool, but it just wasn't enough. But I also acknowledge this is only the first 2 episodes, so I'm sure we're going to get more Bishop, and hopefully we'll get a whole Bishop episode. I would love that, personally. I love Bishop. And friends, so that is basically all of my thoughts. Overall, I have to give these first 2 episodes 10 out of 10 each, 20 out of 20, a perfect score. It's everything I wanted from the show. It's maybe more than what I even knew that I wanted from the show. It might even be, honestly, a 22 out of 20, because that's how perfect it is. It really is great. I can't wait to see where it goes next. And before I go, I'm going to show you this sweet shirt that I'm wearing. It's an awesome meme shirt. It was gifted to me off my throne wish list, and I love it. It's one of my favorites. So yes, thank you so much for this amazing shirt. And thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you next time. And until then, stay nerdy. Bye!